Hello and welcome to Code Nation Fellowship Lesson 3.1. So let's get started today by first opening up your agenda for your program. And that way you'll be able to see all of the materials as well as the slides for this lesson. And then I'm going to encourage you to open up the 3.1 Do Now, which you see right here linked on the slide deck. Go ahead and open that up. Let's take a look. Okay, so we open this up and we can see that the instructions are inside the click handler, write the code that will randomly display a picture of a face up quarter or a face down quarter. You will need a math function and a conditional statement. Okay, we've got the link to the heads image, we've got the link to the tails image. So looking at what you've already been given, which is the button is selected and the function is a click handler. So we know the user is going to click on the button. And then we want the either a heads image or tails image to show up. Okay, pause the video for a minute or two and work on this, and then pick back up in just a second. Okay, hopefully you pause it, you're back, and now let's review the do now. Okay, so we want either a heads image or tails image to pop up when we click this button. Right now, nothing is happening. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're told that we need a math function, okay? So let's do that. Now, if we create a variable, we know that we do that how? Using let, and then we can name it whatever we want. Let's name it random coin. Equals, and then this is where we're going to use that math dot random that we've learned previously. Okay. So now we remember math.random lets us set numbers between 0 and 1. So if we want half of the outcomes to have a heads and half to have tails, then we're going to need half of 1. So we need a conditional statement because there are 2 possible outcomes. So we start conditionals with if random coin is greater than 0.5, half of 1, what do we want to happen? We want this div with the class result to display and a heads image. We'll start with heads, okay? So how do we do that? We can select that div. That result. And then if we remember, we can, or if you don't remember, you can use your reference table. We can add or replace our what's in our HTML with .html. And then we're going to use this image that we've been given. So we can copy the image link. And then we know that we use an image tag, the source attribute. Oh, didn't copy that image. There we go. And then we want to close that image tag for self-closing. Okay. So we've got an if, but we need an else. So we can write our else statement here. Else we want, so similar to what we've already written, our first outcome is that we want the head's image to show. So our second outcome is going to be, we want the tail's image to show. So else we'll have that same selector.result .html. And then what are we going to change here? We're going to change the image link because we want it to be the tail's image. We can grab like that. Okay, let's try it out. Tails, heads, tails, head. Hey, all right. That is how we were going to complete the do now. So let's pop back into our lesson. All right, so we have got the do now done. We've reviewed it. Let's jump into the lesson. So coders will declare functions with a single parameter and return a value. Vocabulary: function, return, parameter, and argument. Coders will also internalize project goals and requirements, plan their projects, and then set up and complete the day one README. Okay, so that is what we're going to plan to do together. Okay, why functions? So have you ever had to copy and paste code over and over and over again? Likely you have. And if you see here in this example, we've got a lot of the same text with some minor changes that's been repeated over and over. And you can save yourself all of the copying and pasting by using functions. Functions are blocks of code designed to accomplish a specific task. Functions help organize longer, complex blocks of code by breaking them down into smaller pieces. The name of a function gives us a way to easily label the code, and functions are reusable. So they can be used anywhere in your program, eliminating the need to write that same code again and again and again. Take a second, think about where you have seen blocks of code before. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, writing a function or declaring a function is like writing a recipe, okay? So we only have to do it once. Then we can call a function, which is like cooking using the recipe, which we can do however many times we'd like, right? A function call may or may not have inputs that we call arguments. Functions with arguments, you can think of that as the ingredients that we use to cook the recipe. And then a function returns a value, like that final product. You baked a cake, the function returns a value, which is your cake. Okay, so where have you seen functions before? Where have you used functions before? So a couple of examples. We've seen functions with click handlers, with alert functions, with number, with mat.random, which we just did in the do now. Those are functions that y'all have seen already. Sometimes they've been written for you, so you may not have known that they were functions. Okay, so when we are declaring a function, we only need to do that once, and we do it by using the function keyword. The parameter, which you see highlighted in the example, the parameter that you create in the function declaration can be whatever you want. It's best practice to make it something that makes sense. So if you are displaying names, for example, you could name your parameter name. What is a declaration of a function? The declaration of a function is creating the function. And then calling the function is actually using it. So we declare it, we're not doing anything with it. We call it, we're using it. We declare our function once, and then we can use the function, we can call it whenever we want and however many times we want. Okay, so let's look at our keywords here. Function keyword is function. Telling our computer, hey, I'm about to write a function. Function name here is say hello, and the parameter is name. The return statement, so we want the computer to return hello plus our parameter, which is name. And we use curly braces around the return statement. Okay, so an argument is the actual information that you pass through a function call. So our function name here is say hello. Our argument is this string, Peter. It's in quotation marks. And so always between the parentheses, the argument always goes between the parentheses of the function call. Okay, so the return statement stops the function and returns a value. When you call the function, you'll want to save the return in a variable. So our function say hello has the parameter name. It's returning hello, the string hello, the actual words hello, plus this parameter of name. Functions can also just run code. They don't have to return a value, okay? So if you declare a function, you do not have to return a value. You don't have to use the return plus an argument. And if you use the console log, then you'll be able to see that you have created, you've created a function. You're just not using it at the moment. Parameters are optional. Return statements are also optional. If we look at this function, what is it doing? If we have this function say hello, and we have the console log search for the quotation mark word hello, we see that we've created a function. We're just not currently calling it at the moment. Okay, so parameter versus an argument. What is a parameter? It's a placeholder. And we put it in between the parentheses when we declare a function. What is an argument? It's an actual value that's used, and it's between the parentheses when you call a function. So parameter, we see those when we declare. Argument, we see those when we call a function. A parameter is like a placeholder when creating functions. So they only exist inside the function's body. And we add parameters between the parentheses of a function declaration. Okay, so in this case, the function change color has the parameter color. And then here we are having the body include the CSS of border color and the parameter of this function, which is color. An argument is the actual value that you use when running a function. So we place arguments in between the parentheses of function call. So we want to change the color to green. In a quotation marks, it's a string. We're returning the actual value green. Arguments can also be variables. So change color, and then what we want it to return is what's inside the variable fave color. Okay, so in this case, are we declaring a function or are we calling a function? We've declared a function. We're also calling the function. What is the name of this function? So if we remember, function name is here. So the name of this function is make excited. What is the parameter of the function? We've got function, function name, parameter is name. What's the return statement of the function? We're returning OMG plus the name plus the exclamation point. Is this a function declaration or a function call? So this is a function call. We're saying we want this function named makeExcited to return Bruno. And then what does this function call evaluate to? In other words, what value will be stored in response? Okay, so we have this function makeExcited with the parameter name. It's returning OMG plus the name parameter plus exclamation point. And what does this function call evaluate to? Let response equal makeExcited Bruno. And so the value here is Bruno. Okay, let's try this guided practice. Okay, so we are going to take a look at the instructions. We want to create a function that squares the input and displays the return value in the message div. Okay, so we need to create a function that squares the input. So we look here, we've got when the user clicks on whatever is inside .square, which is a button. Okay, so we have the variable user input declared, and then we need to call a function here. Okay, so we want to square the input. Let's get rid of this comment. Okay, so we want to square, and we want to use the variable we've already created, which is user input. Okay, so we have created a function that squares the input, and then declared square. Okay, let's see what this error message says. We need a semicolon at the end of line 5. Semicolon. Oops, parentheses, semicolon. Okay, and then it says we haven't declared square. Okay, so if we look at the instructions, we want to create a function that squares the input and displays the return value in the message div. Okay, so we look at the comments. We are going to write the function, the first function here. Okay, in that function that squares the input, so we can write function. And then we can name it square. And the parameter is going to be number or num. And then we need curly brace. And we want it to return. What do we want it to return? We want it to square the numbers. So we square things by multiplying them by themselves. Square number by number. And do not need these parentheses. Okay. And we want to close this. All right, so now we've written function 1. We need to call that function. Okay, so right now it's not doing anything. We want to call it. Okay, so let result equal, and we named our function square, and we want it to square the user input. Okay, so Now, if we put a number in here, 2, hit the square button, the square of 2 is 4. All right, so the next bit is going to be to finish this as the independent practice. You're going to create a function that returns a greeting to the message div based on a given input. And then using a conditional statement, create a function that returns whether a person can vote based on the age that they input. Display the result in the message div. If you get through that and you want to continue, then using a conditional statement, create a function that returns a number value if the user inputs a password of your choosing. Display the result in the message div, or an error message if the user inputs an incorrect word. Okay, so we went through the guided practice. You have the steps for the independent practice. Take a break. Pause for about 10 minutes, and then we'll pick back up. All right, hopefully you took a break and you're back now. Real quick on an alumni spotlight. This is Andres Hutzel. He says, at first I wanted to check out Code Nation because it sounded cool. But after I learned more about the world of computer science, I was curious about coding and everything I could do with it. What inspires me the most is a feeling of success when I do something right, or when I fix a bug and everything works perfectly. The rush of excitement motivates me to keep coding and creating. This is a Code Nation student or former Code Nation student, and we do alumni spotlights so that y'all can see what is possible in the future. Okay, so it's time for us to start a project. You can click into this Let's Play Game link. It is TicTacToe. It's very fun. I encourage you to click into it. We're not going to do it now. Okay, you are going to be building a TicTacToe game. So you can see this is what the final product looks like. If we click O, we click here, it alternates, right? XO, XO, that's what an O1. That's what a typical TicTacToe game looks like. And that's exactly what you're going to build. What is it that you notice about this project that you are going to, that you know how to do? What do you think you're going to need to know to build this? And of that, what do you know? What do you need to know? Okay. So we know we're going to need functions for this. We're going to need conditional statements. There's also going to be opportunities to use jQuery. Let's click into the project planning document. You're going to want to make a copy of this project planning document for yourself and complete it. So we have used pseudocode before. And so the point of this is to complete all these sections of the project planning document before you begin. Okay, so you're going to describe what you want your website to do. So when a player clicks a tile, what do you want to happen? Write it in English. To change whose turn it is to play, in plain English, what do you want your website to do? And once you've done that in English, then you're going to write in pseudocode. So from English, you have described what you want your website to do when a player clicks on a tile. How are you going to accomplish that in pseudocode? Okay. Once you've completed this, then you're ready to begin building your